I want to give you a very good example. I think it's a very good example between looking at a text theologically and looking at it from strictly an academic perspective. A text that I think we all know, a text that I think we all, or a theology that I think most of us were waiting on. And I'm going to use that, capture that to explain how it's important to know the critical academic side of things. Ezekiel 38, we read, "And the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face towards Gog, towards the land of Magog, the prince, the head of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy concerning him." Okay, what do we know about Gog and Magog? What do we know from a theological perspective, a theological realm? What do we know about Gog and Magog? What comes into your mind when you hear Gog and Magog? We think about armies from these kingdoms who would join forces with Satan, the adversary, in an attempt to destroy God's people. We read in Revelation 20, "And shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea." We read also in Revelation 16 about Armageddon, "And he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon." So from a theological perspective, we're looking at the end of days. Maybe the Messianic era. Am I correct on that? So somebody would argue from that perspective and say, hey, look, it's talking about the end of days. That is the theological way of looking at it. A space that I don't want to indulge. I don't want to waste time. Let me step out of this theological realm and deal with the facts. We read in 2 Kings 23. "In his days, Pharaoh Necho went up against the king of Assyria by the Euphrates River, and King Josiah went toward him, and he killed him in Megiddo when he saw him. And his servants transported him dead from Megiddo, and they brought him to Jerusalem and buried him in his grave. And the people of the land took Jehoahaz, the son of Josiah, and anointed him and made him king instead of his father." Let's break this down. Let's look at the difference between looking at data versus just being theological. The single most important moment in the history of Megiddo, from the lens of Judah and Christianity, or Judaism and Christianity, was 609 BCE. Why is this? This is when King Josiah was killed at Megiddo by Necho II, king of Egypt. Who is this Josiah? According to the Judean text, Josiah was the most pious and most righteous king of all the kings of Judah. If you want someone who the title Mashiach, Messiah, fits, it is this king, according to the Judahite text. He followed Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. It was under his reform that made Jerusalem the only place of the worship of the God of Israel. It's under his rule that the first edition of the book of Deuteronomy was written. So we can technically say in Josiah's library was the beginning of the Hebrew Bible. We can say that comfortably. Archaeologically, we do have the remains of an Assyrian palace at Megiddo. We've already discussed this in our series, We the North. When the Assyrians pulled out in the 730s BCE, the 26th dynasty of Egypt inherited this palace at Megiddo and ruled this place for a while. Under the Assyrians, Judah was sitting quietly under the Assyrian rule. And then when the Assyrians pulled out, Josiah thought it was the best time to fulfill his territorial ideology or ambitions, however you want to put it. But what he did was miscalculated. He miscalculated. When the Assyrians pulled out, Egypt came in. He miscalculated by trying to expand to regions that were sensitive to Egyptian interests, which caused his death or execution, however you want to put it, here at Megiddo. I guess the Pharaoh was unhappy that this little Judean king was trying to play in the big leagues. Do we have evidence of the killing of Josiah at Megiddo? We do. Pottery sherds were found in this area, which gave us the link to the killing of Josiah at Megiddo by Necho II. When these sherds were examined, it was found that they came from East Greek vessels. The question is, what were they doing there and how did they get there? The data tells us, we've tackled this before. If you don't remember, you have to go back to the We the North series. We have data that tells us that these vessels were imported and are associated with Greek mercenaries. You should remember that word, that phrase, with Goliath. So the pottery sherds were discovered to be associated with Greek mercenaries in the second half of the 7th century. We know that these Greek mercenaries, they served the pharaohs in the armies of the 26th dynasties. Very important, the historical account. You remember Psammetichus the first, we mentioned him. Necho II, Psammetichus II, Aparis, Amos II, Psammetichus III. These are the pharaohs of the 26th dynasty, and these Greek mercenaries served under these pharaohs. This is why we have their pottery at Megiddo. Herodotus tells us about these Greek mercenaries, but he is like 2 centuries after the fact. But he does mention about these Greek mercenaries who served the pharaoh, but the strongest evidence we have of this is from the 7th century Assyrian source, specifically from Ashurbanipal II, I believe. What does he tell us? This is a clay tablet, and on it is an account of the Egyptian campaigns of Ashurbanipal II, king of Assyria, and his reception of an embassy from Gigas, the first king of Libya. We have this tablet from the library of Ashurbanipal II at Nineveh, modern-day Iraq. I'm giving you sources. I'm giving you receipts to demonstrate what I'm saying from the academic perspective. Ashurbanipal II tells us there was a king in Asia Minor, king of Lydia, named Gigas. Gigas, or Gyges, however you want to pronounce it, sent mercenaries from Libya in Asia Minor to serve in Egyptian armies. This is coming from the 7th century from Ashurbanipal II. Strongest receipt, primary source. Now, this guy Gigas, he's found in Assyrian inscriptions as Gugo, king of Magog. I'll repeat it. Gigas is found in Assyrian inscriptions as Gugo, and he's the king of Magog, simply the land of Gugo. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to see the relation of Gugo, of Magog, to Gog of Magog in the text. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to see it. If you want more data for me to demonstrate that, I will gladly do that. Not here. I would gladly do that. I have it all. I would demonstrate that. In Ezekiel 38, Ezekiel says, "Then the word of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face towards Gog, towards the land of Magog." He's talking about Gigas. The book of Genesis makes these same people from Jephthah. It names them exactly in order. Or Japhet. Sorry. So Gog and Magog in the book of Ezekiel is referring to Gigas. What is this story about in Ezekiel? It is a story of the last important fight, an apocalyptic story, which led later to Armageddon. Oh, okay, Armageddon, huge name, big story. What's going to happen there? Well, for your information, Armageddon is the Greek corruption of Megiddo. The Mount of Megiddo where Josiah was killed. The supposed Messiah. What am I demonstrating here? The last final fight between the forces of evil and the forces of good that you have read that they bombarded you with, which the forces of good will win over the forces of evil, is referring to what happened here at Megiddo. And then the Messiah will return. Why will the Messiah return? Who can answer that question? He was killed here in Megiddo. The one that the Judeans had hope in, Josiah. This is where he was killed, at Megiddo. That is why 609 BCE, I said, symbolizes two main pillars of Judaism and Christianity. Eschatology, the belief that there will be a battle at the end of times, the battle that took place here that Josiah died, where evil won over good, Josiah being the good. There will be another battle at the end of times, the winning of God against the forces of evil this time, which brought the birth of Messianism. And as the result of the victory of God at the place where the last righteous Davidite died, Josiah, a new David will emerge to redeem civilization. This is what is happening, the facts on the ground when we talk about Armageddon, where that eschatological thought came from. I've given you the receipts. This is where Gog and Magog, whatever they're talking about gigas. He sent mercenaries to help in the Egyptian army. Josiah miscalculated and he got killed. Huge blow when we talk about the book of Deuteronomy. Huge blow to their theory. DTR1 ends with the death of the Messiah, Josiah. Those that came later could not accept that. Now we have DTR2 trying to explain it away. This, from a historical perspective, is what is meant by Gog and Magog, what is meant by Armageddon in the book of Revelation. A historical event that happened at Megiddo. And their Messiah, the righteous one, who did all these good things, was killed. Evil won against good. But there's a time coming where good will win against evil. At a second battle at Megiddo. This is what happens when you go toe to toe with someone standing in theological circles. They may not be able to even comprehend this. They may not give it a thought, even with receipts. But what we are doing is looking at the facts on the ground.